Hello, we are here today with the wonderful Ash Van Otterloo. Ash, do you prefer Adler or Ash, or do you not care which?
You can call me Alder. Ash is my official pin name, and it's also part of my name, so that works too. Either one is good.
Cool,
Yeah.
sounds good to me. So thank you everyone for coming today. Ash is joining us from the lovely Pacific Northwest, and I think most of us are from either Massachusetts and I think Andrew's from Virginia. So this is a fun time. And I'm very excited for us to get started. So I'll introduce myself for anyone who's watching and doesn't know. My name's Sam Scala. I am the community planning librarian for the Pullard Memorial Library. And I'm very excited to be hosting this author talk with Ash. And we are here today thanks to the library's foundation, who was like, we will sponsor your events. And I was like, cool, thank you. Please let me pay cool authors to talk. It's great. Uh, and now I'm going to introduce, uh, tell me one more time, I should have asked you before we recorded, Adler or a different way to pronounce it?
Alder. So it's
Alder,
not,
cool.
yeah, it's not Adler like Sherlock Holmes. It's Alder like the tree. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, it is. It's like the tree. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, Ash Alder Van Otterloo was born and raised in the Appalachian foothills and then made his home for 18 years as an adult in eastern Tennessee. He currently resides in the Pacific Northwest with a group of wild forest gremlins and a small menagerie of animals. Alder is the author of Cattywampus, A Touch of Ruckus, and what we're here to spotlight today, The Beautiful Something Else. I'm super excited to chat about all of it. So let's just jump in. Um, so it's been about 2 months since the book release, since your book released. How are you feeling? How's it been going?
It's been really good. It was the timing of the book's release was right before Pride, so I got kind of hit with like the back-to-back double whammy of the book release and then like Pride events, which for queer authors, especially queer middle-aged middle grade authors, and especially those writing spec fic, like there's not a whole lot of fantasy or queer fantasy in middle grade, though that is quickly writing itself.
That is
Um,
changing.
yeah, which I am super enthusiastic about. I'm very excited. But I tend to stay really busy during Pride Month just with different like events and talking to people. And I got to do a little Pride event in Spokane, Washington a couple of weeks ago, which was
I'm
really
so
lovely.
jealous.
It was really beautiful, and it was a great excuse slash opportunity to get to drive to the eastern part of Washington, which I don't get to go visit very often, and meet actually Odyssey Youth Center in Spokane. That's an LGBTQ youth center, and that's what the whole event was benefiting. So that was a really great time. So I don't know, it's been very busy and very full, but like in the best way possible. So yeah, it's been
It
great.
looked like it was such a cool event.
It
It
was
was
it was
like
fun,
Alder and HE, both two amazing authers. What am I
right?
supposed to do? Be on the other side of the country. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Ridiculous. Like we need a portal in queer booklet so badly and that people could just hop
Honestly,
in and yeah, for free and just go
I
across the
need
country. It would be
teleporting.
great. Yes,
I need
absolutely.
teleporting so bad.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah.
So, for anyone who hasn't read The Beautiful Something Else, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure, absolutely. So The Beautiful Something Else, I have a copy right here. The Beautiful Something Else is about a kid who has a parent who has not only a substance abuse problem, but like almost every substance abuse problem is stemming from some sort of trauma that
Mhm.
people have been unable to be assisted with at some point in their life. So their mom is struggling really hard with that. And Sparrow clocks that and kind of steps in to the role of being the perfect daughter, the ideal student, so over responsible, so that anytime their mom gets kind of wobbly and embarrassed socially by like the different things going on in their life, Sparrow can kind of come in and legitimize them by being perfect. So their mom kind of hits rock bottom and they end up going and living on a farm with their estranged aunt, who it turns out is trans. So they go and spend time in this kind of found family queer community that centers around an educational communal garden. And while they're there, Sparrow discovers this pair of thrifted red work boots that are nothing that their mom would ever approve of. And they think to themselves, these are gorgeous. These are perfect. I'm going to let myself have this one. So they grab the forbidden boots. And as soon as they put them on, this mysterious shadow that looks a bit like Sparrow, but not exactly, kind of unfurls and starts to encourage them to do a lot of things that their mom would never approve of. And Sparrow decides that they'll strike a deal with this magical shadow. Like if they can help them be perfect at school and in this new community and learn to navigate the difficult new social rules, um, then they will go through the list and do their mom's thou shalt nots.
Mhm.
And in the process of exploring all these forbidden things that their mom wouldn't approve of, they learn a lot about themselves, make a lot of mistakes, make a lot of friendships, get messy in those friendships a little bit, and ultimately discover that they have an entire identity and self outside of the role that they've played to keep themselves and their mother together. Um, yeah, so that's the book in a nutshell. It's very, very loosely based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Red Shoes. Uh,
Oh,
right. So I
I did
wanted to,
not clock that.
yeah, it's very, very well, it's very loose and it's buried under layers, but that was like the
Yeah,
inspiration of
that's
like,
cool.
yeah. So for people who are not familiar with The Red Shoes, like it's a story about a girl who has these originally a pair of homemade red shoes that they cobbled together from little scraps that they kind of collected for themselves, for herself, and then she goes to live with basically a benefactor, and ends up with a pair of like magical tailored red shoes that end up dancing her around, right? And so I was like, what if we told the story of the red shoes in reverse? What if they started off with shoes that were their mother's hand me downs, right? And they had to be perfect. And then eventually they came across this pair of kind of renegade, thrifted, I found them myself shoes, and learned how to walk in them themselves as opposed to being danced around in their own life. Yeah,
I like that. I
yeah,
definitely feel like I read that back when I was a kid at some point.
yeah. It's kind of gruesome, but it's one of
Yeah,
my favorites. It's one of my favorite stories. Yeah.
because it's funny how like literature like it builds on what came before, and
Hmm.
like with like older stories like Anderson, and even now with like contemporaries.
Yes, absolutely. And it makes me so happy to get to, well, I mean, like all work is derivative, right? There's nothing new
Yeah,
under the sun, right? But
there's
what we have,
nothing really that new.
right, right. But what we have is like our ability to inject our own very visceral emotional experiences into our story and retell them, which is lovely. And I feel so grateful to be given the opportunity to tell some of these stories from a more overtly queer lens, which is something
Hmm.
that is a little bit new under the sun, I guess. So that I feel it's just such a huge privilege, and I'm so happy to be given the opportunity to do it.
And it's really fun to be able to do that because when I was younger, we didn't have queer middle grade.
No, no,
No,
absolutely not. Yeah.
like, and I wasn't that young. That was like 10 years ago,
Hmm.
10, 15 years ago. We didn't have that. So
Yeah,
it's
it's really so
crazy.
new. Yeah, it feels it's so new. It feels like, the when you get like a book fresh off the press or something right out of the package and it still
Hmm.
smells new. That's how
Yeah.
that's how queer middle grade is right now, still, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's even newer than queer YA really is.
Yeah, I think sometimes when people walk into bookstores, and they see like a Pride display, they're like, wow, this is saturated. There's so much queer literature in YA and queer middle grade. Like, there's
Mhm.
so much of it. Like, there's no more room for it. But if you take that little section, the little Pride section, and put it beside everything else that
Hmm.
is, and everything that came before it, it's
Everything
such
that
a
came
drop in the
before.
bucket. Yeah, it's such a drop in the bucket. There's so
It's
much
like
choice.
there's always going to be quote unquote more when other groups are catching up to what's been the mainstream for decades and even hundreds of years.
Yeah,
It's always going to
absolutely.
look like maybe it's a lot, but it's not in the grand scheme of it all.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So before we start talking about your newest book, let's talk about your publishing journey a bit. Your
Yeah.
first book, Cattywampus, came out in 2020. Can you tell us a bit about the process of getting an agent and eventually getting picked up by Scholastic?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. I had just finished actually I had just finished a middle grade horror novel that I was querying before
Ooh.
Cattywampus, which might be getting a makeover in the future, which I'm really
Ooh.
excited about. And I had kind of hopped into what would eventually become A Touch of Ruckus at that point, and I got like a little bit of the way through it, and I was like, I need to put this in a different setting. It was originally put in alt Victorian London, which
Oh,
it's just such a very different setting than the book ended
that's
up
such a
in.
very different setting.
Yeah, so I realized I needed to shelve it and think about that and think about the
Mhm.
characters for a little bit longer. So I had been going through, I had just idly entered manuscript wish list into the Twitter search bar and was just scrolling to see what people wanted. And someone was like Appalachian witches. And I was like,
Ooh.
I can do that. Put me in, coach. Like I got it. So I sat down and I started drafting Cattywampus. And I wrote it, I guess, pretty quickly, like for a fantasy, especially a first crack at fantasy.
Yeah,
Um, over the course of like 4 months or so, and the manuscript was a little
that's
bit,
huge.
yeah, it was meandering and it needed some work, but I was like, well, I'll hop into, I think it was Pit Dark maybe that I hopped onto. And I was like, I'll just pitch it. And Lauren Spieler like pinged me almost immediately. It was like, hey, hop on the phone. Um,
That's
or had
great.
asked for pages. So I had sent pages, and a couple of weeks later, she called and was like, "Can you hop on the phone?" So basically, she wanted me to do a pretty hefty R&R, which is
Mhm.
like revise and resubmit, which was fine. And I was like, "Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to do that," because I realized I really vibed with Lauren. I liked the way that she communicated with me. She's very straightforward, and I need that because I am neurodivergent. So, like, people who give
Yeah,
very direct communication is very helpful to me. I know what to expect. Um, and so, yeah, over the course of the next several months, like, I did some revisions. I was in the middle of moving at that point. I had already decided that I would be moving from Tennessee to the Pacific Northwest. And
oh
I think that was
wow,
like 2018, maybe at that
that's
point, like
such a
late
huge move.
2018. Yeah, it is. So, she was finally like, okay, let's go on sub. So I think I was in the middle of actually repainting the walls in my old house so that we could put the house on the market and then like move across the country. When she called and was like, hey, how do you feel about Scholastic? Which was what I was like, that sounds great. That sounds like
That's
a great,
amazing.
yeah, so I think that that ball started rolling and then I moved and then right after I moved I ended up signing with Scholastic. So yeah, that was a whirlwind time.
Yeah,
Especially just the year pre-pandemic. So yeah, it was
and
a
it's
little bit
like you
wild.
didn't know what was coming. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes it sound like it was kind of quick and easy, but it was just not. I
No, it
think
takes time. It takes a lot of time.
yeah, for sure. And two separate manuscripts that I had been querying before that one.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it but it was wonderful and I'm glad that it happened the way that it did with the manuscript that it did. Like the timing was honestly perfect. I wouldn't have seen it that way at the time, but in retrospect, yeah, it was
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
in hindsight, it worked out really well.
Yeah, always.
And like, I don't know if you had like Scholastic book fairs and like the book things, like the pamphlets that they used to send home. But like, that's what I always think of when I see
Yes.
Scholastic, and I'm like, wow, Scholastic.
Yeah. I think it was a good stepstone, especially for getting into or a good first step for getting into queer kidlit because at that point like I well, help me think. I'm trying to think of like other like overtly just fantasy, like straightforward fantasy, weird
Yeah,
middle grade books that
I
there were at
don't
the
know
time,
any
and
off the top of my head.
I don't either. So I was so for me, it felt like a really good I wasn't sure how it was going to be received because it's written from my home region, which I mean, everyone knows is complicated. It's full of queer people. It's full
Mhm.
of like just diverse representation, period, but you don't often see that presented in
Exactly.
media. So to be able to have someone that is to have a house name that's automatically trusted by teachers, that's automatically trusted by gatekeepers, say yes, we want to publish your book seemed really important to me because there was a chance that it might actually make it into classrooms, which um,
Yeah.
was top of mind for me at the time because I was living in Tennessee and my children were in the school system in Tennessee. And now I guess it's top of mind for everybody now that like it's made national news that so many book
Yeah.
bannings are happening in so many different places across the country. But yeah, it felt really solid and I felt really lucky to be able to go through that avenue to get the book in the reader's hands. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So, I haven't read Cattywampus. Actually, fun
Yeah.
fact, I had actually, I think, picked up A Touch of Ruckus, or it could have been Cattywampus, thinking it was a graphic novel. This was years ago, like
Yeah.
probably when it came out. I was like, it's a
Yeah.
graphic novel. I got it from the
Yeah.
library. It was not a graphic novel. My poor brain was like, I am tired, but I'll read
I
you one
can't.
day.
I mean, in fairness, the
In
last
all
few years
fair,
have been a lot. I think it's broken a lot of people's reading brains.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, Cattywampus is pretty noticeable. Was pretty notable because it features an intersex character, and like in terms of LGBT rep, intersex is really one of the hardest to find um,
Hmm.
in YA middle grade in general. So, what made you decide to want to write an intersex character?
Yeah. I think it's because growing up, I grew up in an extremely fundamentalist background, extreme right wing background. Obviously, that's not like where I'm at now, but that was my parents. And I had grown up knowing that I was queer. My sibling is also non-binary and queer. My parents, for being extreme homophobic, transphobic people, sure are good at making queer trans children. Um, wow, accidental success. Um, so like I had grown up hearing, like God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And so it's so important to me to be able to communicate to people like actually there's so much variation, not just in like orientation and gender expression, but like there's like variation within just like actual bodies, right? Like
Yeah,
I think there are as many people who are intersex as there are natural redheads in the world. Like
yeah, I've heard that too.
that's extremely like common as
It's a
far as
lot
our
more
understanding
common
of.
than people think.
Yes. Yes, it absolutely is. And so I didn't want to write necessarily an issue book about being intersex because I'm trans, I'm binary, I'm queer, I'm neurodivergent, I'm not intersex. So I didn't want to like focus the book
Mhm.
on the experience of being intersex. But I did feel like it was important to be like, yes, and this, and this. I think the book is heavily queer coded in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And all of my characters, like if I had to put a label on them are queer, but it wasn't like extremely relevant to the book plot. So I didn't want to
Mhm.
like shoehorn at that point. Um, but it was important to me to challenge the idea of, oh, things are this way and all these people are delusional. Well, no, of course not. Like nothing is clear cut. Nothing
Exactly.
under the sun is clear cut. And I guess I'll use this little bit to say I really hope that I see points of view written directly from people who are intersex
Yeah.
start entering middle grade fiction like a lot, right?
Mhm.
As many times as we see the redhead trope in middle grade fiction, it would
There
be
should be
really
intersex
lovely.
characters.
It would be really lovely to see intersex characters, especially written from the perspective of intersex authors, um,
Mhm.
to enter the bookshelf of a classroom. Yeah.
And it's like intersex is more common than people think. It's like a lot of people don't even know because there's like new research that suggests like having PCOS is
Yes.
an intersex condition too. And it's like,
Yes. Yes.
even if people might not identify as intersex, they might still technically be intersex,
Yeah,
which I
I
think is
did.
really interesting.
It really is. Yeah, I was able to do quite a lot of I was able to talk to some people from Interact, which is like an intersex
Oh, yeah,
advocacy group, and a couple of people who are their educational people. And they were basically sharing that often people themselves don't necessarily know that they're intersex because often like doctors and when they're born might clock it and
yeah,
then and hide that fact from them and just say, well, we'll just do corrective surgery. And then they're raised as if they were not intersex and they might never know until adulthood when something comes up or they have some like, you know, medical thing that needs attending and the doctor is like, oh, by the way, of course you know, and they're like, no, of course I didn't know, because people basically hop in and choose for people and try to force conformity rather than giving people bodily autonomy, which is, you know, kind of a huge human rights
yeah,
violation in my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, yeah. So this is definitely veering to a different
Pivot.
direction now,
Yeah.
but something I think that's really impressive is that you've like consistently released like one book a year since your debut, which is really, really impressive, like especially in our pandemic, post-pandemic landscape. Like,
Yeah.
how did you manage that? Is it that you consider yourself a fast writer, or did you have like a couple of works that you've been revising and holding on to?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I had a book come out in 2020 and one in 2021, and then I did rest for 2022. But I had one come out in the beginning of 2023, which
Hmm.
was on the opposite end of the year that the other two had been released. So
Yeah,
for all practical purposes, yeah, a book a year. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think partly writing is something that's so hugely regulating for me. Um, like emotionally and mentally, I kind of need to write. And I've been extremely lucky up until this point to be given the opportunity to release a book a year. Um, because who knows if that'll happen in the future, right?
hmm,
But it's been definitely I can't not write. I don't have the ability to not write. I kind of need to be writing or working on something
yeah,
in order to keep myself moving forward and evolving as a person. So it's kind of like hardcore journaling.
yeah,
um, yeah. So I'm in complete and total amazement by authors that I know who are churning out like books in different age groups per year, right?
yeah.
Like
It's
I
different world.
yeah, I know more than one person who has done 2 or 3 books in a year, and I'm just absolutely floored. Um, I do work full time outside of writing, so that
Hmm.
definitely slows me down a little bit. But that I guess the
Even
dream for
then, I still think
everybody.
you're impressive.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I don't know. I definitely could not do that. So I think you're very impressive to me.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel that I've gotten lucky with a couple of the books, like A Touch of Ruckus and The Beautiful Something Else kind of wrote themselves very quickly.
Mhm.
Right now I'm working on a project that feels like yanking teeth. I really love it. I'm in adoration of the project and I'm so excited to get it finished and maybe put it on sub, but it's definitely taking a lot more out of me. Um, yeah, but I do love a challenge. So I'm
Sometimes it just
enjoying it.
happens. Like at
Yeah,
least
absolutely.
like for a lot of people it's with their second book, but sometimes it's with your fourth book
Yeah, absolutely.
in
Well,
terms
and
of
this
like
one is,
publication.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is a bit of a, this is my own little hopeful endeavor of dipping my toe into YA. So it's the first time I've written for
Ooh,
like an older age group too. It's not sold yet, but like I'm
I don't
really
care. I'm
enjoying
still
the
excited.
process of, yeah, trying to find my sea legs. It's different writing for different age groups, so it's kind of fun to see if you can find your voice and try something new. Good.
That's always like a really fun time.
Yeah, yeah.
So something that also that I think is really cool is how music has really played an important role in your life. Something that I was reading is you have a degree in musical performance, which I think is super cool because I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
So, how does um, music and or does it play a role in your writing? Do you have like playlists for your books? What does that look like for you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I kind of in the same way that other people make mood boards, I do need to make a playlist. And usually I have like a playlist for the overall work in progress. And then I have a playlist for each character. So that each person has like their own vibe and I think it's really helpful for helping to like force myself to dig down into what is this person's personality, what's their driving force, like what do they think they want in life, right? Finding songs that really express that and match it help a lot. And every once in a while, like a line from the song will find its way in a really big way onto the page.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, like there have been a couple of times where an entire plot has been altered. Like, for instance, in Cattywampus, I knew that I knew that I wanted to have like a dad that had a like a funky relationship with one of the main characters, but wasn't a bad person. And so I had fallen in love with this song by Shaky Graves called I think it's called Wolfman or Wolfman Blues or something like that. And
Oh,
that I hopped down this entire rabbit hole and ended up with like the concept of the snarly owl, which is kind of like the Southern Appalachians answer to werewolves. And then all of a sudden there are werewolves
oh.
in my story.
Hello.
that
I didn't realize it was werewolves in that story. And now
yeah, yeah,
that might be going up the TBR.
yeah.
Werewolves are my favorite.
Yeah, I have a very soft spot in my heart for werewolves too. Yeah, so like every once in a while, a song will have some concept, and I'll be like, "Oh, does this need to be in the story? I think it does," and then I'll just write it in, and it ends up working out. So, yeah,
That's
um,
amazing.
yeah,
So we're gonna talk about the beautiful something else, I promise. But I
yeah.
have a couple other questions. So I know this is different for like every publishing house, but did you get any say over your covers, like what they looked like? Did you get any say over what your audiobooks, like who your narrators were?
Um, yes, a bit. So, almost every cover I've received, it's been really lovely, especially in regard to different identity points of the characters that are making it on the cover. Um, I've been given like a rough mock-up or concept art for the covers, and then been allowed to like give little feedback for how people are dressed or how they're presenting. So, for instance, I think originally Sparrow looked a little bit older on the cover of The Beautiful Something Else. And
Oh.
I was like, yeah, I think that it would be really nice to have Sparrow age down a little bit and look
Mhm.
just a little bit younger. And I think on the cover of queer haircuts have been a thing. uh, I've been like, no, I don't think that's the vibe we're going for. Can we have like a mullet?
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun too. Um, for the I was super excited for the audiobook readers for the beautiful something else. I felt so spoiled in that I think there was like an excerpt from one of the chapters, and I got to listen to like four or five trans non-binary narrators read
That's
it,
so cool.
and I felt so spoiled. I was like, oh my God. And a lot of them were people who that I knew from other books, right? From YA
Oh,
projects. And
that's so fun.
I think one of them had done a little bit of reading for This Is Our Rainbow, that AJ Sass and Nicole Melleby had put
Oh, I
together.
love that.
Yeah, so it was really special to get to hear and to listen through, and eventually went with M. Grislin, which was lovely. And me and the person who was in charge of the audio agreed that they are just perfect for Sparrow's voice. So, but it was so great to hear everybody's different takes on the story. I was like, oh, all of them are perfect. It's
I
really hard to
love that.
pick. Yeah, it was
It's I
great.
could not like it's like how do you know exactly who's perfect?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the person who read through and was phrasing it in the way that I heard it in my head while I was writing it, right?
Mm.
So it was wonderful to be able to hear someone who looked at the page and really got like, oh, that's the rhythm, that's the tone. So it was really lovely to feel like the character was seen so well. Yeah, it was great. It was good to have that treat.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to ask you one of the hardest questions you have ever been asked. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Yeah.
So I know this is like asking a parent their favorite child, but which of your books do you think is your favorite?
It's always the last one or the one that I'm working on currently. Like they all have a really soft space in my heart, right? Um, I had this funny moment when I was writing Cattywampus, actually, when I realized that I needed to pull the horror project off of sub, and I was so sad. I was like, I love this story, and I had this like really maybe silly but really poignant vision of the characters from Cattywampus coming and sitting beside me and being like, "We're gonna
Oh,
be fine. It's gonna be fine. Just keep writing, right?" And that's how it feels every time. I think like I'm just always trying to look forward and picture the next group of readers who really needs the story that I'm writing currently, to hold them in my head and my heart while I'm writing it. And I think that infuses the current project with a lot of love, a lot of soft spot.
that's cute.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they're passing on the torch, like it's okay,
Yeah,
right? These next
absolutely.
set of kids.
Yeah, yeah, right. This exists already. This story, well, I truly feel that once I'm done writing a book and once it like arrives at my house looking like this, it's not the story in my head anymore. Like it's not my story anymore. Now it's open for interpretation. And so I've kind of handed it, I've done all I can creating it, and now the reader is doing like co-creation, right, on the other side of it.
I like
So
that.
yeah, so now like this is my book, sure, but it's like our story, right? We share this
Mhm.
now. So that I only get to keep the one that I'm working on currently. After that, it's like not just mine anymore. I got to share.
I like that. I think
Yeah.
that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
So both Cattywampus and A Touch of Ruckus had more like definitely more speculative elements than The Beautiful Something Else, which I still think has its speculative moments, obviously with Shadow, who we love.
Hmm. Hmm.
But was it a challenge for you to kind of like shift away from more speculative, or was it just something new and fun to try?
Wow. It definitely was. It definitely was new and fun to try. I was a little. I my brain lives in spec fic.
Yeah, I feel that on a
And
spiritual level.
yeah, and so like and anything horror adjacent is kind of my favorite. So like
Hmm.
Cattywampus has it's not horror, but it has horror adjacent like elements. And A Touch of Ruckus is paranormal. So yeah, again, um but I really enjoyed letting my inner nerd come out in this book. Like at the beginning of every chapter, like there's like not a missive exactly, but it's like essays written from the
Yes,
character's perspective. And so getting to do that kind of like little metaphorical nerdy tie-in at the beginning of each chapter
was
was a
so
treat.
much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So
And I
much.
definitely have like that part of my personality as well, like the data collecting geek who loves to like info dump and be like, let me share with you my favorite thing. So it was fun to have the opportunity to play around in that a little bit. So like I probably will try to like tab dance my way back to spec fic at some point. but
Look, I
but this was
support
so much
you.
fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I feel like it was just adjacent enough to like magical realism that it was
Mhm.
okay. Yeah,
That it's fine. It's like you're nearly there. It's fine.
yeah, it's close enough. Yeah, next door neighbor.
Yes, I like that saying. They're next door neighbors.
Yeah.
Something that I think you did really well was that The Beautiful Something Else handles some really intense subject material, like parental neglect and addiction, and you handled it in a way I think that's really sensitive to what's going on in Sparrow's life, but it's also really realistic as well. Um, like, so how were you able to balance that? How did you make sure that the writing wasn't going to be too much for your target audience, which is middle grade kids?
Yeah. So there's a lot of myself in this story. There's a lot of young Alder in the story. Um, and so as I was writing through, I mean, it's not directly lifted from my life, but there are a lot of things that are very similar to some of the experiences they had growing up. I think I had to really fasten in my mind um, what I would have needed to hear at the time, because in talking to young readers and in meeting young readers, they like kids go through so much. They do.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that often kids are just well aware that life is not being softened for them in any way. So I felt it was really important to strike a balance between not flinching, um, and not pulling punches, because I think that for children who are going through things that can feel so isolating, when the world is presented in a way that's just so bubble wrapped, right, and their own
hmm,
life is not bubble wrapped, it can feel so incredibly isolating. So
exactly.
so it was really important to me to never do that, right? To make sure that I was being like, yeah, this is hard. This is what it looks like when it's hard. But to also not lose the thread of like joy and softness. So um it was kind of like half reality, half wish fulfillment.
Mhm.
Like what kind of adults would I wanted to see in my life? What kind of adults would I have needed to see in my life? What kind of friends would I have benefited from having? And I don't want to stray so far down that path that it became completely unrealistic.
Mhm.
So a lot of the characters that the supportive characters are based on are people that I actually know in real life. Like obviously no one is like a direct one to one. I wrote them into the
Yeah,
book. But like, yeah, people like Aunt Mags have existed in my life and I've met them, right? They're lovely
I
people and
love
just
that.
emotionally intelligent and beautiful and kind and showing up in a way that says, love is action, love is a verb. I will be here for you. And also friends who are like that, because I've met many, many kids that age who are deeply empathetic and capable of
Mhm.
great communication and boundary setting and forgiveness. So it was important to me to also put into the book, like, this is what it can look like. This what can be waiting for you. You can find these people. Because I didn't want everything to be too easy, because life is just
Mhm.
not easy. I'm not going to lie to my readers, but also I'm not going to lie to my readers and say, and you should just give up, because, there are great people in the world who are waiting to embrace them once they're able to find them. Yeah.
So like I really like that. In a way, it's also really kind of healing for as an adult reading this book, being like, I wish I had had that growing up, and like being able to resonate with characters and with Sparrow.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's why a middle grade, I someone said this, middle grade is for kids and everyone else, and it's kind of like
Yes.
that same mentality can be for YA as well. It's for teens and up, and I think it's important. Like, yeah, our
Yeah.
age demographics are really important, and we want to focus on those. But it's also great how much readers outside of those demographics can get from
Yeah.
these stories as well.
Absolutely. I really love I love the saying, you're every age you've ever been, because you are. It's
Yes,
true. Like
you are.
every person is every age they've ever been. Like we all carry around inside of us, um, you know, someone who needs to play with Play-Doh, someone who likes park swings. We carry around with us someone who feels insecure in big groups of of new people, or someone who could really benefit from watching, like cartoons.
Yeah,
um, and I think that the ability to play is something that you do children such a disservice to lead them to believe that you don't need to play as you get older, right? That you don't need to play as you become an adult. Like even elderly people need to play, right? Um,
yeah.
but even further than that, I think uh, it's so retroactively healing to people who didn't, who
Exactly.
had those pieces left out and had those pieces omitted and are missing, representation wise, growing up because they weren't on the shelves, right? Like the ability to go and pick up, you know, Sir Callie off the shelf and read Sir Callie, or the ability to go and pick like The Outsiders or any of the other middle grade books that have come out and pick it up and read it is so incredibly healing. Like there are parts
It
of
is. It
ourselves that we
really
have to
is.
go back and recollect, right? And I'm just a big fan of books that, I mean, hi, everyone's read The Hobbit. That book was intended for children
Yeah,
originally.
exactly.
Yeah, so
And
like
now it's read in like high school classes. I read The Hobbit in high school.
yep. Yes, absolutely. Well, and everybody's gone and seen it in theater. Right. So I'm a big fan of books that have spiral layers. So
Mhm.
if you pick it up and you're very young, you can read it and take away something, and you can pick it up every 5 years after and take something new away from it because you have matured and you can pick up on themes that you didn't pick up on before. I'm a really big fan of books that are able to do that. And it's always like my hope and endeavor that I've managed to do something that kind of approximates that. Yeah.
I think, and you really can see that, like, even if you don't see it, like, anecdotally with, like, a person doing exactly that, you see it
Yeah.
with the reactions from different age groups of readers, which is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Makes my heart happy.
It makes my heart really happy, too.
Yeah. Oh.
Um, another one of the things I really loved was your cast of characters and, like, how many different kinds of queerness there are, like, from our main characters, like Sparrow, obviously, lovely
Yeah.
child, and Win and Sully, and of course Aunt Mags, but also like with the college students as like a secondary cast.
Yeah.
Uh, we really get a refreshing wide variety of characters. And honestly, I'd really say it's a great book for kids who really might just be learning about the queer community as they're growing up.
Yeah.
And like my question is, which characters were your favorite?
That is such a difficult question.
Favorite favorite kid question once again.
Yeah. I had so much fun putting together this cast of characters because like, okay, and a week in the life of Alder, right? I can go have dinner with a group of people. I can go camping with a group of people. I can wake up and have my living room be full of like my kids' friends. I can see like 20 or 30 people in a week, and every single one of them is queer and most of them are trans.
I love that for you.
That's like
That's the
but that's
dream.
that's like queer community though, right? Like we play bunch ball, we find each other, right? We do find each other. Which is not to say like it's exclusive, but like we do tend to gravitate toward each other and find each other. So um I think early on someone had been like, is it like unrealistic to have, and I was like,
No, it's not.
no, it's unrealistic that we have so many books that don't have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it like Token
Birds of a
here.
feather.
Yes, absolutely. I have to say that I have a big soft spot for Aunt Mags, because Mags
Me too.
is someone who I wish that I had more of in my own life. There are certainly people who have like filled that role in my life at
Mm-hmm.
different points. But yeah, I love Mags. I'm a big fan of I I'm a big fan of Win and Sully, obviously too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I love all of them.
Of
I
course, you love
I
all of your children.
yeah, I love all of my children. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I guess I have a favorite scene. My favorite
Oh.
my favorite scene I think is the one where Wen and Sully and Sparrow all get together and kind of do their own drag show, impromptu drag show moment.
Oh, that's the art that I saw.
Yeah, I think it's so lovely and it's such a
I
queer
love
sleepover thing to do, to be like, hey, let's all cosplay. Like,
it's
yeah,
true
why not?
though.
Let's do this thing. And I think I loved it because everyone was being so thoroughly themselves and also so thoroughly and supportive of each other. Like there wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
competition, it was really just a celebration. And I thought, yeah, that's how it is. That makes me happy. It makes me happy.
I love that.
Yeah.
For me, Aunt Mags was definitely my favorite.
Yeah,
And it was really kind of special to have a trans woman in middle grade in YA because we definitely don't have a lot of trans women. We don't have a lot of trans girls.
yeah,
So it was like really refreshing to like meet her and to have her play that really important role as a paternal figure,
yeah,
as a parental figure in Sparrow's life.
yeah.
And I think that's really something special that I would love to see more in like middle grade and YA.
Agree, agree. Put so many more in. I am so excited.
Please.
I'm excited to see an absolute wave of trans femmes, trans women like show up in YA middle grade. My heart.
I feel like when trans YA especially was coming, it was more trans femmes and it wasn't own voices, but it was we got trans femmes and now we're in trans mask. It's like, can't we do all of it together,
Yes,
please? We don't
yes,
need to pick one or the other. Let's not be binary, guys.
yes, yes. I
Let's
love
just
it.
have all of it.
Yes, we need everybody. Everybody at the party is more fun.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
do want to ask if anyone in the audience has any questions because I can keep talking, but I also want to give our lovely audience a chance to talk if they would like to. Y'all can type. I'm gonna ask another question while we wait. Um, so for me, something that was really fun to, as I was reading, I was like, ah, yes, Sparrow is neurodivergent. Ah, yes, this is an autistic ADHD child. I would
Uh-huh.
know because I'm both of those. I was like, I'm relating with this child very much. And
Mhm.
I kind of really liked that we didn't necessarily have to see like the words ADHD or autism like on page, but it was still there and it was still really clear.
Yeah. Because hi, so am I.
Yeah, whole
Yeah.
party.
Yeah, so like it's interesting like retrospectively if you go back and read like all of my characters, Tyler and Fox and Katie Bird and Delpha, like all of them are neurodivergent. And I
I
think
love
that's
that.
because I'm autistic and ADHD, so like everything that pops out of my brain is going to look that way. Um yeah, and I think that there's definitely a place, and I'm so grateful for the people who are writing to that end. Like very specifically and pointedly saying, yes, this is an autistic character, because they think that's really important. My experience growing up was being like not so medically supported and definitely zero support going into like figuring out neurodivergence or mental health. And I think
Yeah,
that's an experience that a lot of people who are raised unsupported share, right? You don't necessarily have terms for it. You don't necessarily process it as I'm doing this because I'm autistic, but like
exactly.
you are like all of your thought patterns and like your needs and the way you're trying to navigate them or hide them sometimes
Hmm.
definitely comes back to neurodivergence. And um so many things are being addressed in the book. I think sometimes identity is used as a marketing point, and I guess that's understandable because
Hmm.
marketing is looking to connect like-minded books to like-minded
Yeah,
readers.
it's
Um,
like how they can help you find.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a quick shorthand. Yeah. Um, so uh, yeah, so I didn't necessarily push in on saying like, and this is also another piece of Sparrow's identity, because in Sparrow's life, with Sparrow's parent and the level of support they're currently receiving, I don't think Sparrow would have known.
yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, so it's not something that I really leaned in on, but it's definitely present. And I think that most neurodivergent people who read it are like, oh, Sparrow, baby, I see you.
I see you. I definitely see you, small
Yeah,
child.
yeah.
But we have a question from the audience. Um, uh, Teresa, I'm so sorry if I didn't say that right, but what's your favorite book of all the books you've read?
Of all the books that I've read, period.
Yeah.
Oh my. There are a few that have really stuck with me in a way that um have gotten under my skin and have never really left and continue to influence probably everything that I write. I think that The Deep by Rivers Solomon has been a recent one. Um, Love that book. Also, We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Um,
Ooh, I've
um,
definitely heard both of those before.
yeah, also The Haunting of Hill House is lovely. But We Have Always Lived in the Castle, like Mary Cat, the unreliable, awful little young teenage girl who's in that book is just one of my favorite little murder babies.
I love that.
I love a good monster murder baby. So that's another big favorite. And I'm sure that others will pop into my head as I think about it. I really loved I think it's mentioned actually in The Beautiful Something Else Doll Bones by Holly Black. Um because it's just such a horrific, wonderful concept. This doll is haunted because a father who was a bone china maker uh made the bone china doll out of the bones of his daughter who died of like an illness. So it was, became
Ooh,
haunted by the, or supposedly haunted by the girl whose ashes it contained. So like
that's so creepy.
it's gruesome and it's middle grade. Anytime someone's like, is this
That's
too dark
middle
for,
grade.
yeah. So anytime someone's like, is this too dark for middle grade? I'm like, no.
That's what I
Absolutely.
say when
Yeah.
people ask that for YA, and I'm like, Hell Followed With Us exists and was a New York Times bestseller. Nothing's too dark.
I love that book, by the way. That book is like, that's a book that that teenage older needed very badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely wonderful book. Um,
Sam, with all the religious trauma, definitely needed that
yeah,
book.
same, big same.
Religious
Yeah,
trauma buddies.
fist bump.
We have a lovely question from Jackie. Is there
Uh-huh.
an author that inspired you to become a writer yourself?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Thinking about that one. I think at the time that I was really working hard on books, I loved Maggie Stiefvater so much. Like Maggie's prose is it's definitely very unique. So
Definitely.
I loved that. I'm trying to think of other books that I Terry Pratchett. I'm a huge Terry
A
Pratchett fan.
classic. A
Like
classic.
the ability to handle difficult topics with just so much just stark bluntness and not pulling punches, but with just enough humor and heart that it like goes down and you can receive it. Gorgeous ability, gorgeous ability. So I think that in so many ways my writing is patterned after that specific balance of trying to
Hmm.
put in like, yeah, this is how the world is, this is how the world actually looks, plus also so much humor, so much heart, and so much compassion for like basically the human what's the word that I'm looking for?
Human condition?
Thank you. I was trying to say the human plight. Same,
Oh, close
same,
enough.
but yeah, that's what I meant to say, what you said. Oh, exactly that. So yeah, I think that those voices were definitely ones that were in my ear big time, along with a whole bunch of poets.
I also like my next question is pretty similar to this one. Um, what are some other books, middle grade or otherwise, that you would recommend for fans of The Beautiful Something Else or any of your other books?
Oh my goodness. And so I had a list and I was rolling in here on two wheels. And so now I'm gonna try so hard not to forget every single book I've ever read before. So I mentioned Sir Callie before.
I love Sir Callie. We love Esme in this house.
Absolutely wonderful. Also Nicole Melleby writes in contemporary
Yes,
vein. Nicole Melleby has Sunrise Lagoon books coming out. I think not this year, but possibly next year, or they're coming up soon.
I
Those are
think two of
excellent.
them came out already.
Did they? They
I
okay. So
think so.
they're fantastic. I had the privilege of reading, I think, the first three already. They're so good. Especially if you enjoy like large blended family dynamics, queer family dynamics. Like I think if you enjoyed like the big queer found family and beautiful something else, you'll really enjoy like the mixture of parental units and blended family and found family in the Sunrise Lagoon series. Big fan of that. Um, let's see what else I could recommend. I think that you mentioned Deke earlier, but Deke's I Don't
I
Want to Be Your
love Deke.
Monster. I got the chance to read. I'm so excited to see another like horror queer. Yes, that book absolutely excellent. I blurbed that one. Big giant fan. Also, it's really nice to see a lot of local landmarks because it's set in the Pacific Northwest. So it
I
was fun
love
to
that.
see like the brothers go running, like speed running around like the places that I'm familiar with was super fun. So that was really wonderful too. If you liked the voice from Cattywampus, and this is going to take a while to come out, but H.E. Edgman has Flicker coming out next year.
I'm so excited.
I've
It sounds
also
really
had
good.
the privilege to read that. It's just everything that you would hope for. The Appalachian vernacular is kind of similar. It's also got like characters who have had to grow up like too fast. Very similarly to Cattywampus and A Touch of Ruckus. So like if you enjoy that representation, it's kind of like I think it's been compared to Hatchet, and I would
Oh,
agree with that. I would agree with that. It's great. So that's another one to look forward to. And of course, there's another Sir Kelly book coming out this fall, which I'm
I'm
super
so
excited about.
excited. I
And I'm
cannot
sure that
wait.
there's also Justine Winans. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's
Oh, I
I'm
know
going
what
to
it
look into it.
is.
It's hold on just a second.
The other,
The Other Woods. Is it Into the Other Woods?
I think it is. I have it on.
So
Yes, The
I
Other Woods.
Yeah, okay. So I had the chance to read that one as well, and it's kind of like it's also horror. It's twisty. It's kind of got like Coraline vibes a little bit, like aesthetically, and that was just so much fun for me to read. That would make like such a good moving into Halloween season book.
I'm
Yeah,
very excited for that one.
yeah, it's good.
H.E.'s Godly Heathens has been living in my head rent free since I read it in January,
It's
and it
so good.
hasn't left my head.
It's so good. I got to read the next one, the one after,
I'm
Merciless
so
Saviors, and
jealous.
holy heck, it's so good. I'm
It's
so
living in my
excited.
head
So excited.
rent
There are a
free.
couple of others that I really wish that I could recommend, but they've not been announced yet, and so I'm so upset about it. But in the vein of voices that we wish that we could see more of, just keep your ear to the ground. I'm so excited.
I'm very excited.
Yeah,
There's so much cool stuff coming out of middle grade right now,
yeah,
and it's like I specialize with YA like personally, but I'm like I got into middle grade. I don't know how. I think it's probably Deke's fault, but
yeah,
I'm just really excited for like so much cool stuff that's coming out of middle grade in
yeah,
the next
yeah,
year or so. I'm like,
yeah.
ooh, it's really a lot, but it's
Yeah,
like a
it's gonna
good a
be
lot.
gorgeous. It's gonna be absolutely gorgeous. I'm excited.
So I think we are probably around the end of our time, but are there any new projects you want to tell us about or anything you'd like to plug before we leave?
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like I just plugged so much.
Plug whatever you like.
I'm just like throwing glitter in every direction. Um, let's see. I have a couple of projects that I'm working on. Neither of them are sold. I'm just working on them and I'm excited about them. I have a YA horror that I'm tooling around with, and
Oh,
also
hello.
I'm hoping to veer back into real hard, like actual pure middle grade horror, which I'm excited about. So those are two things that I'm working on right now. As far as plugging goes, uh, I don't know. Just go. It's always lovely to me when people go and seek out queer authors, especially middle grade authors or voices that you don't hear a lot from.
Oh,
Like
have you read because I'm reading a lovely arc of it. Alex Wise versus the World. It's so
No,
good. You have to
no.
check it out. It's so good. It's by Terry Benton Walker, who just
Oh
released
my
his
God.
YA
Okay.
debut. Yeah, it's
I
so
am
good.
I'm reading the YA debut right now and it's yeah, it's excellent.
Blood
Like
Debt's so good.
the magic system set and like the deep south, that's exactly my brand of smack. I love it. It's so good.
Blood Debts was so good.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
Alex Wise is very different, but it's such an interesting take on like on like an apocalyptic like magic system in a way. It's really
Yes.
great.
Oh, I love that. I'm looking forward to that so much. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad you've
It
loved.
comes out like the same day that the new Percy Jackson book comes out, and Terry's like, I don't know how this happened.
Listen, there's room for both, and don't tell Percy Jackson, but I'm more excited for that.
Honestly, I mean, I love Percy Jackson. It was like
Same, big
the
same.
thing when I grew up. And it's so great that we get to see all these different mythologies now and focusing on so many other different kinds of characters. Like from the get go, we get to see prominent characters of color and queer characters. And it's
Mhm.
so great to see how much middle grade as genre, well, it's not really a genre, but you know what I mean, as like
Yeah, I do.
a system of books has grown over like
Yeah,
my entire lifetime.
it's gorgeous. It's
So
absolutely
great.
wonderful. I'm excited and I love it. Every time I walk into a bookstore and I see like a display with queer middle grade, especially diverse queer middle grade, it's like, yes, thank you. That's all I wanted. That's everything I wanted. It's good.
And it's so nice to kind of get to see the next generation read and kind of like our generation read with them.
Yes, absolutely. And I that's one of my favorite things is seeing people who grew up on Percy Jackson, who grew up on like, oh, there's a queer character in this series. We were so excited about that to see everyone be so supportive and do so much connective work like what you're doing right now to make sure that people know about it, to get the word out about it and be like, here you go, babies. This is for you. Like
It's like,
here,
here you go. You have
we
so
make do
many
this.
options now. You have
Yeah,
so many
yeah.
options, and that's just so
Yes.
great to me.
Yeah, it's good. And what you're doing is a huge part of that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for writing books so I could put them in people's hands.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
always makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I
Of
think
course.
with that, we might be at the end of our time. Um,
All right. All right. Thank
this
you so
was
much for
so
having
much
me.
fun.
Yeah, it was
Thank you
fun.
for
We did
coming.
get stuff. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you everyone for coming and staying till the end too. That was a lot of fun. And thank you once again to the foundation for sponsoring. They're
Yes,
really
thank you.
great. Thank you
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to end the recording.